Right. Good morning, grade sevens. Today we'll be looking at a new topic today. So what I'd like to quickly just share with you is our new topic. I hope you can all see that. And our new essential question for this week, or new topic for our reading and everything based on our reading, is people and the planet. And our essential question is, how do we as people contribute to our environment? How do we look after our planet? For example, many people wonder at the beauty of nature, but do they wonder about the future of our planet? Do we care about our planet? What measurements, what are we putting in place to look after our planet? And I want you to please now go to our very first story, which is called Rethinking the Wild. And that story you will find on page 356. And what I want us to do here is to read through the story with me together for this lesson, because it is a reading lesson. So I need you to turn to page 356, and we're going to have a look at the type of text that this story is. I want you to go here to the heading here, which is Launch Text, Argument Model. So this text represents an argument. So it's like a debate, a type of writing in which an author states and defends a position on a topic. This is the type of writing you will develop in this performance-based assessment at the end of the unit. As you read, think about the way the writer presents a position. Notice ways in which the writer weaves together elements of storytelling and informative writing in support of the argument. So let's have a look here, Rethinking the Wild. So we need to remember our essential question, because that also guides us to a better understanding of the argumentative text. So Rethinking the Wild. There are 7 billion people on the planet, and each of us has an impact on the animals and plants we share it with. It's a constant give and take, and people have strong opinions. Give and take means, you know, sometimes you've got to do something in order to get something. And a lot of people do not have the understanding of why they should be looking after the planet. Even though the correct course of action isn't always obvious, sometimes the needs of human beings have to take priority. Priority means their importance. So sometimes it's saying in this paragraph, if I have to summarize this paragraph, that sometimes we do the incorrect thing and we harm planet Earth, we harm our environment because we human beings have priorities. We have other things that's more important. For example, like driving our cars. For example, there are some people that pollute the air, okay? In Joel Muhallim's book, Wild Ones, he describes the attempt of one organization to save the whooping crane from extinction. Our crane is a type of bird, and extinction means is when this bird doesn't exist anymore because it has died out. It's a story that may challenge what you thought you knew about the sometimes competing interests of people and animals. Now remember, this is an argumentative text. So when you are writing or reading an argumentative text, it is always important to state facts so that people can believe you. The North American whooping crane, one of the few living relics of the Pleistocene era, suffered a huge drop in population in the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1860, there were 1,400 whooping cranes. In 1941, there were just 15. And in 1967, the whooping crane was listed as endangered. Okay, so I want you to please, I'm going to highlight this word here for you. I want you to please write that word down as part of your vocabulary list that I'd like you to learn. So I want you to write down the word endangered, and I also want you to write down the other word that we have done. There's another word I'll come back to. Muallim explains how Operation Migration planned to save the whooping crane by raising a new flock in Wisconsin. Now, Operation Migration is when a certain population needs to move. So obviously where this bird might have been endangered, they had to move it. So where it could be saved. The hard part would come next, getting the birds to migrate to Florida. I also want you to write the word migrate, please, under your vocab list in your book. Here's how they did it. They led the birds there themselves. In a disguised aircraft that looked and flew like a bird, they flew along with the flock. They avoided talking and even wore all white costumes so that the cranes wouldn't get too comfortable with humans and would remain wild. When the cranes reached Florida, they were put into a release pen with no top netting, so the birds could fly away themselves when they were ready. The complex was surrounded by houses. In fact, it was practically in the backyard of a couple named Gibbs. And that's where the second part of the story starts. Let's move on. Please move on to page 357. The Gibbses, that is their last name, the family name, an elderly couple who'd lived there for 50 years, loved nothing better than to sit on their back porch, sip tea, and watch the birds as they fed from the 2 bird feeders they'd set up in the backyard. There were all kinds of birds around, but the Gibbses' favorites were the whooping cranes that had started showing up lately. As far as Operation Migration was concerned, this could destroy their project. So now we look at elements of this argument. I want to stop there. So the writer, the author of this story, has obviously set the scene very beautifully. He's used facts. That's number one. If you want to win an argument, you need to use facts. He used dates. He used facts. He used people's names. He used numbers thus far. Unless something were done about those feeders, the birds would continue to hang around the Gibbs' house. They would no longer be wary of people and wouldn't be able to survive on their own. So what the author is stating here is that they want these cranes to remain wild. Otherwise, they won't survive because they are endangered. These birds are going to become extinct. After explaining the situation to Mrs. Gibbs, representatives from Operation Migration asked her to remove the feeders from her backyard. Now, feeders are something that we use to feed the birds. A lot of older people have them in their gardens because they like the birds to come into their gardens. But the Operation Migration didn't want this because they needed the birds to remain in the wild and not become used to human beings. But she refused. Her husband, it turns out, was dying of Alzheimer's. Now, I want you to find out what that word means, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is also when you become old and people start forgetting. And the only thing that made him happy and brought him into the present was seeing the family of whooping cranes in his own backyard. The scientists were unmoved by Mrs. Gibbs' story. Unmoved means they didn't worry about her story. They just wanted to save the birds. They didn't worry about Mrs. Gibbs' story. They were thinking of the birds that people had spent 24 hours a day trying to keep wild. They were thinking of all the time and money they had invested in this group of cranes. But in the end, they had to back down. Back down means they had to step away from the situation. How can you ask a woman to choose between her husband and a flock of birds? According to John Muirlin, Mrs. Gibbs did what any of us would do. As humans, we are hardwired to put our particular set of needs above others. So she had to put her needs first. She was worried about her husband and she needed the birds to keep him happy. I'm at paragraph 10 now. I need you to follow. We also have a responsibility to be the Earth's caretakers because of the power we have over other species. And sometimes we have to be comfortable balancing our needs with theirs. So the author is also arguing here that yes, Mrs. Gibbs needs to put her own needs over others, but she also needs to consider and be responsible for the planet. She needs to be responsible too for the birds. Let's read on. Okay, over here, grade 7s, like I explained, I want you in your books to go back. People and the planet. It says here vocabulary. A word network is a collection of words related to a topic. As you read the selections in this unit, identify interesting words related to the idea of people and the planet and add them to your word network. For example, you might begin by adding words from the launch text, such as impact, extinction, and survive. Continue to add words as you complete this unit. Now, I don't want to give you all the answers over here. I want you obviously have to go back and read this text again. So we have words like migrate and endangered. Any words that has to deal with our topic of the planet, I want you to add in here for homework for me, please. Then, also part of your homework for this session would be on page 358 to write a summary of the story. Now, it says here, write a summary of Rethinking the Wild. A summary is a concise, meaning short, complete and accurate overview of a text. It should not include a statement of your opinion or an analysis. You must write exactly, in short, what this text is about. And you must include the main points of the text, please, grade 7s. Secondly, also part of your homework would be on page 359, a quick write. I need you to read this, consider class discussions, presentations, the video. Okay, this we might leave for the next session. For homework for now, for this session, I would like you to complete the summary on page 358 and the vocabulary words on page 357. Right, thank you, grade 7s, for this session. I will see you in the next session tomorrow. Thank you so much.